Welcome everybody to this evening's webinar with Dr. Madeline Barlow from Drexel University's athletic department. We're going to be talking tonight about starting strong, creating a success in life after sport. So just before we get started here, I wanted to just let everybody know that we have a couple of webinars coming up in the next few weeks. One on a coach's journey to the coaching career with Mehdi Razali, the Drexel tennis coach. Ken Mercet, who just finished some research on coaching stress and avoiding burnout, is going to join us. And then Caleb Messi, who's one of our doctoral students in the EDD program, will be talking about baseball players' transition and a holistic approach. And really excited to welcome Madeline with us today. She's been with us a number of times before and has done some really great research on athlete transition. And this evening, really looking forward to hearing about Madeline's approach to steps to creating success after sport and specifically laying a foundation for athletes, coaches who support athletes in the transition, and also administrators in that role. So Madeline, I'm gonna hand the screen share over to you. And just want to thank you and everybody that's with us tonight for hopefully a really great conversation. So welcome.
Great. Thank you so much. So before I start sharing my screen, I did just want to dive into a little bit of an intro beyond that. Why is this important to me? Why is this something that I chose to spend a number of years researching? It's very close to my heart on a personal level because I did struggle with that transition out of swimming. I was a collegiate swimmer and into what was life after sport. To be frank, even in the final moment of the last stroke, the last butterfly stroke I ever took, when I hit the wall, I had an extremely visceral response that felt like such a loss, even to the point that it felt like a death, felt like something left my body. So that's my personal experience with the very final moment of my swimming career. That then led to me not wanting to think about it for 2 years. Didn't think about it. Didn't really want to be near a pool, had some pretty intense separation, which was healthy for me at the time. But eventually it felt like there was something missing, which did lead me back to the world of sport, the world of sport psychology in particular, and to get my PhD studying the transition for my dissertation. So that's just a really brief synopsis. I could go on and on about that though. So if you want to talk about it more, we can talk about it another time. So this has led me though to develop, my own business through recognizing what my purpose, what my passion is, which is this transition, and helping athletes or supporting athletes as this guiding light through, the choppy waters that are life after sport for many. So from there, I'm going to pull or share my screen first. I've never done this, so we're going to see how it goes. We will start here and see what we can see.
Yep, that's really good. We can see that.
See it? Yep. Okay, now what happens if I press present? Can we still see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Yep. Okay, so we're going to start with this. So again, this is the way I wanted to present this information because, more often than not, athletes want to feel that level of success. Striving towards goals is key, is essential to just to moving forward, to maintaining dedication and motivation. So having a focus on success as it's relative to you, right, is really important because success is different for everyone. But recognizing what we can do and how we can work together to support that success in life after sport. Okay, so again, we have 5 essential steps. These have been informed not only by my dissertation, but also my personal experience and the work I've been doing the last couple of months. So let's just get right into it. Step number 1, We are going to take a moment to reframe the word strengths and turn them into superpowers, because this is the way that I view them. I view our strengths as our superpowers. So growing up as an athlete, you typically become accustomed to a coach watching over you at practice, guiding you, nurturing your athletic ability, yet with a critical eye, right? More often than not, your coach may be pointing out what you're doing wrong in an effort to help you do it better. Of course, makes sense, right? Without an awareness of this problem, we'd never know. We'd never be able to improve. Absolutely true. Yet there's a downside to this in life after sport, because it no longer serves you to be consistently focusing on your weaknesses. We want to help you acknowledge the 98%, I bet you, 98% that you are doing well, that you are good at. This feeling of it, it just doesn't feel this way sometimes, right? The negative often has more weight than the positive. So this feeling really prevents you from noticing anything but this measly 2% that encompasses what you aren't good at. I want to do a disclaimer here too. If you'd like to learn more about that 98% versus 2%, I get that from Dr. Amy Baltzell, who is a really wonderful individual who I've met personally, but she wrote the book, Living in the Sweet Spot. She was an Olympic rower. She works with Olympic rowers. She works with college athletes in Boston. So I can pop that in the chat once I go to questions. Really wonderful book that helps you to focus on your strengths. So what the key is here, you need to direct the majority of your attention to those superpowers. Focusing, giving them the energy they deserve to make them more powerful. Love that. It's really powerful and transformational. This really will give you the momentum you need to up-level in life after sport. And I think what I want to do here is actually go in and answer a question that somebody had asked ahead of time, which I love. I love ahead of time questions. Relating to this step, in terms of current athletes, the question was, what can coaches do to help current athletes see the life lessons they are learning while still athletes? This is it. This is a key. Step one, help them gain awareness of their superpowers, of their strengths in sport, but also how it may relate to them outside of sport, in their day-to-day life, in school, and potentially in their future careers. So I hope that answers that question, but we can always come back and answer it a little bit more in depth as well. Step two, moving right along. You now need to move into alignment with your superpowers and also limit contact with your kryptonite. So clearly I have a Superman thing going on here, but I think it really highlights the key points, which is, having this powerful awareness of our superpowers allows us to move into alignment, maintaining that superpower, keeping it up-leveled rather than diminishing its power, basically. It's possible that you did develop this superpower in your sport, which is awesome. For so many people, so many athletes, you develop these wonderful, strong characteristics. Whereas for others, you may not have had this strength come about or surface until you get space from your sport. This happened for me personally. One of my strengths is the ability to deeply connect with people because I am a highly sensitive person. I take on people's energy. I recognize their energy really easily. And I also need to step back and set boundaries to recharge. I didn't know this when I was an athlete. I was constantly surrounded by people. So for me, it took some time and space to let that superpower come about and to step into it more often. So when we think about a classic superhero like Superman, for example, he first had to accept this power, right? He had to acknowledge that he had this power before he was even able to use it. That's often the case for many superheroes, right? You have to accept it, acknowledge it for what it is, so you can claim it and then sink into the energy of that power each and every day. When it comes to doing this, it's easier said than done, right? So here's a great point for me to stop and highlight what I have created to do just that, which is my Success After Sport Starter Kit. In that kit, you will be able to go through step 1, go through step 2, gain awareness, and then step into the power, the strength, in an effort to, again, create the success that you want in life after sport. So that starter kit is specific to these 2 steps. I'll also post the link for that in the chat when we get time, because I also include something like it's a guided audio process, a guided mantra. This helps to get you into that space, get you into that energy. It's awesome. You definitely want that. So you'll be able to, if you so like, to download that for free and use it in any way that you need it at any point in time. So that is step 2. But let's also highlight, I almost forgot, but I didn't. Let's also highlight this kryptonite aspect, right? When we think about Superman and kryptonite, it was draining of his energy. It drained his powers. It prevented him from using them. So in life after sport, once you gain awareness of the things that you might need to limit or what you may need to do to keep or maintain those superpowers, you're going to be much better off and much more successful. So like I said, for me, a drain for me, my kryptonite, is not setting boundaries, is so much social contact without taking that step back and time to recharge. So that's the way that I go about acknowledging my power of connecting, but needing to limit that connection each day so I can provide the best value, the best service, the most authentic connection. So it's really important. Again, you'll dive into this awareness of your kryptonite in the Success After Sport Starter Kit. I think what I would like to do is see if, or give everybody a moment. Oh, let's not skip ahead yet. Give everybody a moment. If you have a question, I'd love for you to pop it in the chat. I'm just looking at the questions from before, or Cam, if you'd like to ask a question before I dive into steps 3 through 5.
So there was a question that was relating to what you're calling kryptonite, and
Sure.
How do you avoid those things that know are triggers, but also not minimize them? You know, that tricky balance of knowing what tears you down, but still there's some things you have to do regardless.
Absolutely. So that's a great point. Balance is important. So I'm just going to continue to use myself as an example. When it comes to my job at Drexel, right? I do meet with coaches, athletes, administrators, etc. That's my job, is to meet with people, to show up, to be in relationship, to have that dynamic where we're communicating, especially now when we're doing it virtually. For some reason, it seems like a little bit more, if that makes sense, virtually. I think a lot of people can resonate with that. We're on our computers now, face to face, eye contact is pretty harsh on the computer. So acknowledging that I do have to show up, meet with those people in the way that's required. But when I have the time and space, which sometimes I have to make it and acknowledge, oh, can I step back and say no right now? Because this is important for me. Or do I have to show up? So noticing that first is really important. And then again, setting the boundary, going from this office to my bedroom, basically. So one door over, but using that space to recharge, knowing what I need to do, like going for a walk each day, a walk for me, not just to walk my dog, but a walk that feels really good and recharging for me. And any other way. Some people may like more vigorous exercise, which is great. If that's something that recharges you, it lifts you up. Awesome. Do it. If it's reading a book or writing in a journal, whatever it is, using the time you do have to give yourself back that energy is so important. Does that answer your question or the question? Awesome. And I don't know, can I see the chat here? I'm not sure. Let's see. Yes. Okay, we don't have any questions in there right now, which is fine. Awesome. So let's go ahead. We're going to move on, go back to presenting, move on to step 3. So like I mentioned about this Success After Sport Starter Kit, steps 1 and 2, you will do a deep dive in that starter kit. Steps 3 through 5 are a little bit different. They require being in relationship, in communication, in connection, whatever you want to call it, with someone else. Because while you can do some of this on your own, as an athlete, I want you to consider this. You have been coached your whole life. You've had a coach. Awesome. That's so good. That's so great. And acknowledging that as a strength of being in relationship with that person, having that guiding, more objective point of view is so powerful. But in particular for these steps, you do want to work with someone through this. So a coach, a professional, if you so relate to me, working with me on these steps, right? That's really important to consider for these 3. So I'm not going to dive too deeply into these, but there are some important things to know. Step 3, get comfortable talking about what you're good at. Often, for people in general, but also for athletes, there is a tendency to find some challenge in being able to speak to your strengths. So why is that? You know, it's maybe a value of modesty, or feeling that if you do that, it has an air of cockiness to it, right? So that's something that can come up for a lot of people in this step. So you'll need to work on reframing this belief and gaining the confidence necessary to speak about them, projecting your strengths or superpowers into the ether, right? That's really the essential aspect of this step. So what I will leave you with for this one is considering the difference between confidence and cockiness. Confidence smiles, cockiness smirks. It's only a slight difference that separates the two, but it's necessary to understand that you can and should talk about your superpowers openly, especially if you want to find success in life after sport. Considering, you know, having to write personal statements for graduate school, you have to talk about yourself. You have to talk about what you're good at. You may then be moving forward and on to the interviews for those, or interviews for a job. You have to talk about what you're good at, right? So being able to do that with an air of confidence is so important. Step 4, gaining clarity about how to use your superpowers to your advantage in your life now. Okay, so we've moved from an awareness of your superpowers, aligning or maintaining those superpowers, and now we're working on how, right? The last step was a how as well. But for this, you have to get really specific about your desired goals, right? Your desired outcomes in life after sport. So most athletes are very adept at setting goals, which is awesome. It's so important. But you have to have a really clear understanding of how you're going to highlight them based on what you want. What do you want to do? What's your passion? What's your purpose? Right? So this step again involves communicating with someone so that you can work this out a bit. For some, you may already know, which is great. For others, it's about teasing it out and coming to a conclusion about what your newfound purpose and passion is. It took me a while. It took me many years to really recognize that working with athletes, supporting athletes as they leave sport is a passion of mine. It's very important to me. So doing this and recognizing that your strengths make you unique, right? No one on this earth is exactly like you. So how can you see this as an advantage, no matter what the strength, no matter what the superpower is we're talking about, and highlight them to reflect such? It's a really fun step. Who doesn't like helping people discover their passions? It's really cool. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back. We have a question that's related to this one. So let's dive into that fast. So this one is mainly for employers. So future employers, what can employers do to assist in refocusing former athletes' energy in a professional non-sport setting? So this again goes really nicely with step 4. Like I was saying, you do this in communication with somebody. That somebody may be your employer, right? That's really great. Someone that's a mentor. So maybe it's not an employer, but a mentor in the field you have an interest in, but allowing them to help guide you through really getting that specific understanding of where you want to go and how you're going to do that. So this is an important aspect, speaking to the energy, right? Knowing where your energy needs to go, directing it by acknowledging your superpower and seeing it in that frame of reference is really helpful for employers, mentors, again, individuals that you work with while you're still in school. So academic advising type individuals. Your coach can also help you with this potentially, but doing this in that relationship, in that dynamic is so important. And now we have step 5. Okay. Final action phase, right? Consistently highlight your superpowers in your day-to-day at school, work, and in your personal life, right? These superpowers will come up possibly in different ways, in different situations, right? But acknowledging that you need to use them or you'll lose them, right? Just like physical skill, just like going to practice every day. It was consistent. It might not have been perfect. It was consistent, right? Every single day showing up. So here's the same thing. You must show up. And when you show up, great things can happen, right? That's what's really key about this is, again, you know your goals, you know where you want to go, you have an idea of your purpose or passion, and now you apply them. This is a step that is more, it's based on you and your action. But by this point, you will have built the skills, developed the confidence, and awareness to be able to do this out in your world, in your life after sport. Again, super relative to you, whatever that looks like. But it's the final and most essential step is consistency. And I think we're going to spend the rest of the time answering some questions, but here is, again, this final piece here. I kept referring to my starter kit. Again, 1 and 2, diving deep into steps 1 and 2. I'll stop sharing actually. And what I'll do, I'm going to throw that link right into the chat. So let's see, stop share. Okay. Awesome. And while I'm throwing this into the chat, if anyone has questions right now, I welcome you to throw those into the chat, and we can dive a little bit deeper into them.
Madeline, while you're doing that, I think there's some really, really great practical aspects to what you're talking about here. And I think going back to step 1 and just the strengths and understanding that, can you talk a little bit about how a strength like, being driven to win and competition, or wanting to be, in the routine of practice, or even just loving to work hard. How is that something that you can translate off the field of competition into just life in general?
Sure. So again, just to reiterate, you said something like the love or even need to win, working hard, so work ethic, right? Was there a third one? I think you had said a third one. I can't think of
just being a part of a team.
Oh, being a part of a team. So, I think all 3 of those are quite self-explanatory in the best way. The desire to win, or the desire to, let's replace win with success, right? Again, that's something that's relative to that person, but it means more than likely you will be resilient. And if you're resilient, it means you will do something and you will fail and you will get up and you will do it again. So I will just keep giving little nuggets into my personal life. Graduate school and applying to graduate school was wild. It was not easy. And I was not accepted everywhere. And you get those emails back that say you weren't accepted somewhere. And it's pretty heartbreaking. It's hard to know that you weren't wanted somewhere, but to keep pushing and to keep doing it, to keep applying, to keep your perspective open to other opportunities as well. That's what led me to the doctoral program I ended up in. I really just opened up. I didn't sit around for too long anyways. I did cry a little bit. I'll say that. I'll be honest. But I didn't sit around for too long. I decided, okay, hold on. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something. And then it worked out, which is really, really beautiful. So that's one way. Again, I think work ethic goes really nicely into that. Very similar. Always, I don't want to use the term pushing through because I don't love that. But in terms of like we were saying, knowing that you need to get the work done, knowing that you need to show up, and knowing in your core that you have to show up, and you do. Or even when it comes to assignments, so if there's any current athletes here right now as well, or anyone that works with current athletes, often people will say to me, oh, I'm just so overwhelmed. I have so much to do. And I will say to them, do you ever not get your work done? Genuinely, do you not get it done? Have you ever not handed in an assignment? More often than not, I have had a couple people say, well, yes, but that's okay. It happens. More often than not, the answer is no. I will always get my work done and hand it in. I'll show up for the test. I'll show up for the project. And I say, okay, so if you know without a doubt, you'll get it done, you don't need to worry about it because you'll do it. And it shifts the perspective away from all this stuff back to, a confidence or belief in oneself. Awesome. It's really, really cool. So those are some examples. Okay, it looks like we have a couple questions. So let me look into those. Let's see. Okay, so how as coaches can we help senior athletes have an easier transition from athletics to life after sport? A lot of us took a lot of time to realize and find their purpose. And I feel like this is something often overlooked in coaching and not in place currently. Yeah, so again, this just depends on you as a coach, the way that you, or the dynamic you have with your athletes, considering the connection you have and how that would, how that might allow you to communicate with them on this topic. Because let's be honest, for a number of coaches, you don't want to think about your athletes being done. You don't want to think about, or you don't want to have your athletes think about being done. Because, well, if they're thinking about life after sport, will they be in it when they're supposed to? The answer is yes. But it's a challenge to overcome some of that a little bit of that anxiety or control even. And so helping them, again, just with the language you use, with the focus on strengths, not always, but more, bringing the strengths-based focus in to your coaching philosophy, I feel is extremely valuable, because we can't get better just by focusing on our weaknesses. We have to know that we're good at something and that we can keep being good at it. So language, connection, and a strengths-based focus are my top 3 suggestions for coaches.
And Madeline, you also mentioned you were going to post up Amy's book on
Yes.
on finding living in the sweet spot. I think that's probably another really good segue into just, you know, we've only been in this situation for a little bit over, what is it, 6 weeks. So how we adjust to that change, I think inevitably is a challenge for all of us. And that next question from Elizabeth is another great one. What advice can you give current high school and college athletes that are experiencing a little disappointment from not being able to play their sport this season due to COVID-19? How can they stay motivated?
Yeah. This one is challenging as well, right? So I don't want to keep using that word. Not everything is a massive challenge, but you know what? This right now is extremely unprecedented. It's nothing like anything any of us have experienced before. So it's very new. It has the potential to be confusing. Again, there's no set date in mind right now, and there may not be for quite a while. So for both current, former, high school, college, all of these different types of athletes, and you, I'm going to say that, as coaches as well, myself included, some of the most important things right now. So staying connected and engaged, you to your athletes, athletes to athletes, finding a way to engage in a way that feels right, feels good, feels necessary even, is extremely important. Forming some type of accountability groups or having an accountability coach, basically, right, is also really important for athletes when you consider, I think I mentioned earlier, athletes have always had a coach. Always. From the moment I started swimming, I had a coach. I had multiple coaches and they held me accountable. Not to say that we can't do things on our own, but willpower does break down. It does. So recognizing that it's okay to find others, to hold one another accountable, to feel that sense of connection, just like you would if you were on the field together right now, just like you would if you were on the water or in the pool right now, on the court, et cetera, et cetera. That's really important. And finally, in terms of goals, breaking those down and having them even shorter term goals right now. There is no reason to set long-term, way in the future, a future that's super uncertain goals. So for some people, that may mean 3-day goals. That's okay. For some, it may be a week. I would stick to max 2 to 3 weeks out from where you are. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? How are you going to accomplish that? Break it into the process, away from the outcome and back to the process. So I hope that helps to answer that as well.
You know, that concept of the sweet spot and balance, I think, is so critical. But with this uncertainty that, you know, even day to day seems like a long time. I think there's a bunch of people that are like, what happens if I don't feel good? What happens if I don't feel motivated? Is that okay? And then what do you do with it? So, you know, I think the fear of touching that negative, you know, that icky feeling is like, oh my God, if I touch it, I'm going to be there forever. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I do think, again, as athletes or as coaches even, often it's hard to reconcile with having a bad day, quote unquote, right? And yet we all know that we will have less than stellar days. And I think this is a really unique opportunity to just, again, lean in to that, because we're all going through a collective trauma. Let's just call it what it is. This is a collective worldwide trauma right now. This is really wild. And recognizing that some days are just going to be the day where you need to sit on the couch. That's okay. And if you can release yourself, because what I'm hearing as you were saying that, even we might often feel ashamed. That's a big word, but I'm going to go for it because we feel as if we're not doing it the most, if we're not doing it every day, that's not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's shame. And so if we're able to release some of that right now and say, okay, today wasn't my day. I sat on the couch. Why did I sit on the couch? You know what? My body was really tired. My mind, I did so much work today. I just needed to sit. Okay. And see if you can be, you know, compassionate towards yourself, towards your athletes, if that's coming up for them. But in particular for yourself, because when we do it for ourselves, the people around us often recognize that as well. And it can be really helpful.
Really good one. And I think this next one links in just with, again, the theme of the superpowers and being energized. But the question was, do I keep in touch with past teammates? Do I continue to stay active? What's your comment to that one?
Sure. So this would be, I guess, in terms of the former athlete. Is that what we're thinking here? Yeah. So this will depend, right? Again, this will depend. I personally talked to only a couple of my past teammates. I also had some challenges, and that's putting it lightly, with my teammates. So because of that, it has moved me forward in a way to make new connections that really fit with this, I want to call my, like this me 2.0 type of thing, me now in life after sport. And that energy aligns better with who I am now. So for anyone out there thinking of this, there's no right or wrong. You don't have to, if that's not right for you. Again, release some of that need to do what you think is right and come back to yourself, gain awareness of who you are, what you value. And if those individuals match or fit with that, that's wonderful. Yes, that's great. And if not, take some time to consider what or who does in this life after sport.
Oh, that's great. And it speaks to this concept of what meaning do we put to this time? Do we call it a crisis? Do we call it a lockdown? Do we call it a disruption? I've heard people call it a hold, which I think is really sweet. It's like hold. I don't know how long I can hold onto this, but it's just the word we give to it. And you know,
Right.
a lot of people look at it as an opportunity. And all the way through this, I keep wanting to ask you this question. At what point did you decide that you wanted to continue your life in sport, but as a sports psychologist? Was it a downside? Was it an upside? Did someone say, "Hey, Madeline, you'd be a good sports psychologist"? What was that sort of that helped you shift your sporting life out of the pool, so to speak, but to continue being in sport?
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, I had that pretty traumatic end, right? So I wanted that separation, and maybe once not the right word. I needed it. I swam for 15 years and again had as many trials and tribulations as one could have, as per usual. It's just how it goes. And unfortunately ended on a tribulation, on a negative. So I had some unfinished business type of situation where I didn't reach my goals in that last moment. And I never will in swimming, because I will not swim again. I will say that. That's just a personal choice. But in that time and space, so it was about a 6-month period of as little thinking about swimming as possible. Again, I think something slowly started to creep in, telling me like something's missing. I'm not sure what it is, but something is. And then I was down at UNC Wilmington for my master's, and I had a friend on the swim team, of course, because swimmers are everywhere. And I went to see her swim, and it was in the stands as a spectator, which was crazy, that I did feel the pull back to sport, back to, you know, I don't miss getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and jumping in a cold pool, but I do miss the athlete piece, the athlete identity. And I still didn't take it back on. I still, you know, I don't necessarily consider myself an athlete anymore. And that's, again, personal. Everyone's different. But I did feel that because of my experience, because of just the love I had at one point for swimming, that I was meant to be in that space in some way. So I did slowly start researching sports psychology. I didn't have a true awareness of it, but I slowly but surely started looking into it for the next year. And then by that time, I was ready to apply for PhD programs.
Yeah, so there's a couple of powerful comments in there that I think really hit home. Is one, listen to the calling. You felt a draw, and whether it's athletes out there feeling like something's been taken from them, there's been an involuntary end.
Yes.
That can happen in your last year of college. That can happen if you continue as a professional sport, but there's an involuntary end. It could be injury. It could be, hey, you just didn't make it. But the second part of that, when you feel that draw, is, you know what? There's just a different avenue. And maybe there's some budding young coaches out there. Maybe there's some future sports psychologists. And for those coaches and administrators out there, when was the last time you said to somebody, hey, have you ever thought about coaching? Have you ever thought about a life in sports administration, or going on and doing finding a different path? Because I know a lot of people, or almost all the people I know in sport, had a successful or a life in sport and found their way back into sport. So I think what you're saying there beautifully is, it's not the end. It's probably a sharper turn than we all thought. It was sort of like, you thought it was going maybe a little bit like this, and then all of a sudden it's a 90 degree, or maybe for many of us, it feels like 180. And that difference between it being a voluntary end where you say, hey, I'm done.
Right.
Where for all of us, we feel like it's been put on us.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important to consider right now. So again, involuntary, not only as, you know, a traumatic injury, right? A career-ending injury, but that's one quite traumatic way to end your sport career. And it ends so quickly and abruptly. But also now considering what has happened in the last month, you know, while many individuals may be able to return for their senior year. Some may not. Some may have to choose. So some people could say, well, it's still a choice, but it's not necessarily. So there's just circumstances that are leading these individuals to have to make the choice to move on, to move forward, without being able to complete that final season that they had so vividly, I'm sure, in their mind. So recognizing that, and as coaches, recognizing the challenges of that, providing space and support as they feel what they feel, when they feel it, because it may not be now, it may not be in 6 months, it could be in 3+ years, you just don't know. So just being there, asking, what do you need? What do you need right now? What can I potentially give you? And if they want it and you're able to provide that, that's wonderful. If not, again, finding other professionals that are able to provide that support and guidance moving forward is really important as well. And just, it's key to get this message out there that it's a strength to be able to ask for guidance, especially when you've been so accustomed to it your entire life.
Yeah. So, and that theme of staying present, like we do in high pressure situations in the athletic realm, that you can't think about the next play or the next game or tomorrow or next week. It's got to be now. Mm-hmm. And the other beautiful theme I think that you speak to is self-reflection of, have you actually stopped and said, how do I actually feel right now? And so often we look at success on the field of play and wonder why that doesn't necessarily translate to real life, or even the lessons we learn in the field of play. Maybe we learn dramatic lessons in the field of play. Can you speak a little bit to how do you take those, let's call them failings or losses sometimes? How do you take that and integrate that into real life? So it's not, I make the mistake on the field of play and I continue to repeat that outside in the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this brings up, the potential fear of failure type thing, right? This is what's happening or has the potential to happen. In particular, so again, I even said I had so many moments that I can still very clearly remember that just didn't go well, to say the least. And were personal failures, including the very final race of my life. So for me, it did stick with me. And I'm just going to put that out there. It stuck with me because I didn't know I even needed to do anything about it. I didn't know I needed to grieve that loss, that failure, so that I could spin it and turn it into something really positive. It took me almost 7 years and a PhD to do that. I don't recommend going and doing a PhD just to overcome a fear of failure. I just don't. But what I do recommend is, again, I think the key here is finding a way to highlight your resilience. Most athletes are resilient. Let's just be honest, almost all. You just face mistakes and are often having to go right into, let's do it again. Try it again. Get up, do it again. So using that and highlighting that characteristic in an effort to say, hold on, I messed that up, but this is something I'm good at right here. So again, going back to your superpower, it all comes back. It always comes back to raising your confidence or developing confidence around those superpowers, especially in life after sport, seeing those failures as lessons so you can grow versus, so again, it might take some grieving around it and releasing of the failure. But if you in time, again, through working with somebody, can spin that into a lesson, you can grow, you can move forward. And you, like I said, for myself, I don't think I would be able to do this work without some of those failures, especially that final failure. So it took many years, but I was able to reframe it as something now I get to help others with, which is really a beautiful thing.
And again, it's such a great metaphor of when the chips are down, you as an athlete, what do we turn around and do? And I hate to dredge this one up because it's about 1,000 years ago, but my last high school race, we came last at the national championships. LAST, it was awful. And you said the word cry, and I did it, and it was awful. But you know, a lot of years later, I'm still in this business. So sometimes it may just be reaching out to someone and saying, "Hey, what do you think I should do?" And I think we've all had people around us, call them mentors, coaches, teachers, someone that just says, "Hey, you know what? You might not feel it right now, but you're really good at this." Yeah. And guess what? Even if you're not really good at it, you love it, and you wouldn't be asking the question, and you wouldn't be feeling this level of emotion if you didn't care about it. I remember one of my athletes said to me, "Well, it wouldn't be fun if it was easy." And I was like, yeah, all right. But
yes,
you know, that's the adversity, right? The adversity. How do you turn that around? Is I guess the theme of the day, right?
Right. And the coolest thing I will say is to be able to, at least in my work, I love sitting across from someone. So now sitting across the computer from them, but that's okay. You can see the same thing, and bringing someone to a place where they begin talking about something they enjoy, just genuinely, authentically love to do. And they may have been talking about something completely different before, or maybe it was their sport also. That's possible, right? And they're talking about it. And if they're talking about that and they're a little bit tighter in their face, or like their shoulders might be up a little bit, and then they start talking about what they enjoy, and this lightness comes over them. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And to experience that and to be guiding someone to that feeling in their body, but also the awareness of why that matters. You know, the simple things matter, because often people think they're simple or small as in a negative, but really acknowledging, no, that's just something that's beautiful to you and it means something to you. There's honestly nothing better. There's nothing better than seeing that. And I know, I'm sure as coaches, people can relate to seeing something similar when your athlete is just in the moment and in the zone doing something to such a beautiful capacity. And you just, I don't know, there's very few words. It's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a perfect way to sort of wrap things up. And I'll leave you with this question and just have everyone think about this for themselves of what is the one moment that you really cherish in your sport life, your sport career, because I know for the many people that I talk to, it wasn't winning a competition, it wasn't winning selection. It was actually those moments where you were eating with the team, a meal, or it was a bus ride, or it was those sort of fun times where you just feel connected to something a lot larger than yourself. So Madeline, just giving you a moment or two to think about it. What was the sort of the pinnacle moment where you thought, hey, this is why I do, why I want to be involved with sport?
Yeah. So I do have to project back to high school, which is fine. But my high school club team was genuinely my second family. My teammates were family. My coaches were like second parents, which was the most beautiful thing. And so really feeling that bond on such an authentic level. And like you just mentioned, all of those experiences then with them were so cool. Like it sounds kind of lame, but it is just so cool. Like, yeah, the bus ride. Yeah. Awesome. I wouldn't have wanted to be on a bus with anybody else. But then of course, there were a few moments, like especially this one relay that I'll never forget. Not only did I swim out of my mind, we swam out of our minds, and we did it together. And that was so cool. It couldn't have been done by just one of us. So, having the hugs afterwards, all of us were crying. So there we go. Having those tears together is really, really beautiful. And so now being able to witness that in a different way is also really beautiful. I still find myself coming to tears over some things, and that's totally fine. Did I mention I was a highly sensitive person? It's just how it is. But recognizing that, there really is a special bond that can be formed between teammates, between coaches to athletes, et cetera, et cetera. So finding ways, again, in this time in particular, to engage that and connect with that is the best thing we can do right now. And if you are someone here that is a current athlete or a former athlete thinking about ways to ignite that passion, sit into a moment like that I just described for myself and see what comes for you in that way. Reflect on that. Why was that important? Why did that feel good to you? And how might you be able to find something similar in life after sport?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Madeline.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of really great folks out there representing all kinds of organizations from high school all the way through to beyond college sport. And so Madeline's shared her contact information there on the chat. So
yep, we got a couple different options over there. So my email is just straightforward. My Instagram for some really cool content, but also that third link has lots of different options, a podcast. The Success After Sport Starter Kit is there too. Website, all that fun things.
Awesome.
Yes.
We'll have to have you back again.
Yes.
To talk about the flow state, caring, and honestly, I think the one thing that speaks to all that you've shared is your absolute honesty. So I appreciate it. We got a couple more coming up in the next few weeks. The director of tennis at Drexel, Mehdi Razali, is going to join us and talk a little bit about his coaching journey. We've got some tips on how to avoid burnout with Dr. Ken Messette in 2 weeks. And then my buddy Caleb Mezzi, who's one of our doctoral students, he's going to be talking about baseball player transition, and some reps from some of the professional teams are going to be joining him. To let you all know, we've got a number of webinars, and Madeline's done has got another one of her webinars archived on the Sport Coaching Leadership site last week. Karen Freeman, one of our nutrition faculty members, shared some insights with us. Tim McLaren was 2 weeks ago. He's a 5-time Olympic medal winning coach, also a silver medal winning athlete. He shared some tips on the fundamentals of coaching. We also had Sarah Noon talking about athlete development, and likewise with John Crawley, one of the US Olympic Committee high performance directors. So that's just some of the resources that are on the Sport Coaching Leadership website. We've got an evaluation that will go out in the next hour, hopefully, to all of you. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and any future webinar ideas you have. And if you've got any questions of what's come up today, please let either myself know, that's me at the bottom there, or David Appleton, who's our program manager. So again, Madeline, thank you very much. I appreciate your energy, your expertise, and your time. And likewise to everybody that was on tonight. So we'll wrap this up now, and hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you again.
Thank you for being here, everybody.